Hello, BookTube. I've been feeling a little under the weather lately, so I did not make it to the Brattle bookstore recently. The Brattle Bookshop is a used bookstore in downtown Boston. They're fantastic. Three stories of books. The third floor is antique books, collectible things like that, but the first floor and second floor are just jam-packed with books on every subject under the sun except romance, and in every format, just piled everywhere. It's wonderful. And also the shop has a sale lot next door, a gigantic sale lot with thousands more books for $1, $3, or $5. And I like to go often to the Brattle. The stock changes so often that it's a new experience virtually every time. But I didn't get a chance to do that recently, so I went back this morning, first thing, and got a pile of books I want to show you, including many examples of Brattle axioms, Brattle behaviors of one kind or another. I always say the Brattle will provide. If I'm reading something, whatever it is, a new book, a book review, piece of journalism, whatever, and it opens up a question or a longing for some book or some subject in me, my instinct is to go to my shelves and look to see what I have that will satisfy that in terms of ancillary reading. And whether I have something or not, in that moment I'm always thinking, well, I'd like more. And that temptation has never been more deadly than it is now, that you can pull out your iPad, go on a half a dozen different websites, put in your credit card, and get virtually anything that you want. I don't do that. I make a point of not doing that. That way it lies bankruptcy for me, and also whims like that die down. That they shouldn't be acted on. You should wait and see if it's real. So in moments like that, I always say the Brattle will provide. Sooner or later, because that opening has come up in my reading, I will spot something or something will arrive at the Brattle that will fill it. And by then, I will have had time to let it marinate a little. I'll know whether or not I really want a book on that subject. That's one Brattle axiom, but another one is second chances. The Brattle gets so much stock of every conceivable description that if I see something there and I want it, or I'm holding it in my hand and then I decide nah, and I put it back, and then I decide later on that I want it, it'll be gone, but it'll show up again. The same thing is true with books that I've already got that have been in the house, where I might have had them and liked them, enjoyed them, maybe annotated them, and then for some reason I get rid of them. In years past, I would mail them to people who I knew. Now I still mail them to people that I know. And then you're just lacking the thing, and you're waiting for a second chance. So I had a lot of all of those today. In addition to which is a new wrinkle, comparatively new wrinkle at the Brattle, which is BookTube buying. Seeing something at the Brattle and either getting it because I know one of you wants it, or because there's some BookTube-related reason why I would get it. Maybe someone has sung the praises of a book that I have dismissed. I find it outside in the sale lot for $1, all of a sudden I'm going to want to give it another try. Or there'll be a BookTube event. Maybe a BookTube event. There are books that cover almost all of these in this stack here, which I'm hoping my ergonomics are okay for the stack. I never quite know until I try it. So let's do the mass market paperbacks first, starting with a BookTube event. There's a BookTube event ongoing right now. New World's November. It's in its second year. I'm one of the co-hosts, where the Bookish Bryants created an event to celebrate science fiction, specifically to celebrate shorter science fiction. This is a novel, this thing that I found, but it's only 200 pages long, 180 pages long, so it fits. This is Nightmare Blue by Gardner Dozois and George Alec Effinger. Effinger was the author of a famous trilogy, and all three of those volumes were at the Brattle, but it never did anything for me. And this is one that I've never read. This is just a fantastic old-fashioned science fiction cover. And if I remember correctly, this is about a drug. Nightmare Blue is a drug, I think. So for New World's November, I am definitely in the mood to read as much science fiction as possible. Then I found an old Penguin mass market, these orange spine mass markets. I had this once upon a time and really enjoyed it, and knew, even after it was gone, in the ensuing decades, I knew that if I wanted it again, I would want it in this format. Maybe an e-format as well. I have a lot of books, a lot of e-books, and I love that format, but sometimes you want the print backup as well. And this is one of those. This is a writer's notebook. by Somerset Maugham, with a kind of stylish cover there. And I like this book a lot. It's a little bit Mandarin, as Mom is just in general, but I really enjoy it. Then we'll talk about Mandarin. let's get all the other Mandarins out of the way here. Here we have Max Beerbohm. This is Seven Men and Two Others, an old Penguin classic. This has, I think it has Enoch Soames. Yeah, the first story in here is Enoch Soames, the great story about the round reading room of the British Museum. But I don't have any Beerbohm collections at all. And this one, these old Penguins are so stylish, and they are solidly made. So it'll stand up to a reread. I think pretty much all the mass market paperbacks that I got will stand up to a reread at least a little. This next one was going to go right here in this room. I'll have to get the library stuff off it. But this is a Viking portable, an old Viking portable. I once had them all. I don't know why. I honestly don't know why I got rid of them. It was when you have a project like this from a publisher, so much depends on the editor that you get. If you get a good editor, then you're going to have a great line. And when I know that about a line, I shouldn't get rid of any of them. These were done by Viking Penguin before they were Viking Penguin. This was a fat anthology volume of a whole bunch of different authors. Shakespeare, Edgar Allan Poe. William Faulkner was one of their best-selling ones. Hemingway, Hawthorne, all that sort of thing. And I found the one for Henry James, which I haven't had this in forever and ever. This has 3 novellas, I think. Yes, The Turn of the Screw, The Beast in the Jungle, and The Pupil are all in here. But there's tons of short stories. There's critical essays of his, travel pieces of his, letters of his, all that sort of thing. I love these volumes. Oftentimes, I have thought they would very much do as a substitute for a whole library if you had a whole library of these things. I especially like this design, where you've got a photograph that somehow signifies the author. You've got a little photo inset of the author, and the design looks like that. There's an earlier design for these, but I like this one. This has a library sticker on it, so I'll need to get that off. But I'll also go through it. I'll certainly read the nonfiction again. And then the last two mass market paperbacks are for a BookTube event. It's not currently running, but it did run this summer. It was June on the Range. Michael K. Vaughan made a BookTube event called June on the Range, where we read Westerns. Just have a ball reading Westerns. I had a blast with June on the Range. And I'm not saying that I won't read any Westerns between June on the Range last year and June on the Range next year, but it's possible. I can't make that claim with New Worlds November, and I certainly can't make that claim with March Mystery Madness. I simply cannot do it. Some genres I read a lot more of than others. Westerns, in the meantime, in between now and when June on the Range 2023 rolls around, I will just accumulate some Westerns as I find them. And I found 2. I found one by Steve Frazee called Many Rivers to Cross. No idea what attracted me to this volume. But it's, what have we got here? Bush drew his knife and tomahawk and tossed them aside. He was uneasy without weapons, but this time it was the only way. The insult had been hurled, and he was man quick to jump at a challenge. Okay. Well, I have no idea anything about this. Never heard of it before, but I'll definitely give it a try. And then there was one that I just couldn't pass up. This thing is by William MacLeod Rain, and it is one of these old pocket paperbacks that are surprisingly durable. They really do take a reread. This is called Oh You Tex. And he looks kind of melancholy, doesn't he? And I think his neckerchief is a little on the flamboyant side. I think there's a little bit much to the neckerchief. What have we got here? In this novel, the author shows that he is one of the few authors who can write stories of Western adventure that ring true. The tale takes its title from one Jack Roberts, a Texas Ranger in the old days of the Civil War, who was known to his friends as Tex. And this came out in 1919. This came out in 1919, which makes sense, because around that time, around the teens and the early 20s, there was an enormous language fad of oh, you, and then something. No one, it sounds like nonsense. No one does it anymore. It's long gone. But as a linguistic fad, it had a heyday. You could pretty much date a book like this, or the most famous example of it is Isabella Stewart Gardner, the namesake of the Isabella Stewart Gardner, who a long time ago said, "Oh, you Red Sox," and that then 100 years later, the Gardner Museum made that into a banner and put it outside the fence of their museum, and then the Red Sox won the World Series for the first time since she had done it. But this author was phenomenally popular. Wrote a million books, like so many of the authors that we encountered in June on the Range. He was just phenomenally popular. Many of his books were made into movies. He wrote dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of novels. And there are many like him, is what I'm trying to say, is that there are many Western authors out there like this who have just churned this stuff out. So I'll put this on the pile for June on the Range, and these old pocketbook paperbacks that have surprisingly durable binding, and that tell you, they make a strong pronouncement, don't they? Isn't that right? Pocketbooks edition. This book is not a digest or a condensation of the original. It is the complete book. I have a whole bunch of these things, and I've never had one give out on me yet. So those are the mass market paperbacks. And then are all the rest of them hardcovers? Oh, almost. Almost. Well, we have a couple of small books. This one is from Modern Library. Yes, this is a little specialist volume from Modern Library. I've never had it. I've read many times, I'm sure, everything that's in it. But to have it in a neat little volume like this would perfectly slip inside the pocket of a bag, or even do a lot of rereading tonight. I could reread this in half an hour. This is On Writing, a collection of shorter writings by Eudora Welty. There she is. From Modern Library, just pulled these things together. So we have, yeah, see, you've got the Modern Library thing there. Not the only Modern Library volume I bought today. So you have looking at short stories, writing and analyzing a story, place in fiction, words into fiction, must the novelist crusade, is Phoenix Jackson's grandson really dead, and some notes on time in fiction. And I have read all of those, but I've read some of them more than others. I will pick a couple that I'm not all that familiar with and read them tonight, probably. Then another really skinny book. I think I have an ebook of this, but I've never see it, so I grabbed it. It'd be fun as a kind of time capsule way to revisit it. This is No One Left to Lie To, The Triangulations of William Jefferson Clinton by Christopher Hitchens. Tiny little booklet about what a crap heel President Clinton was. Hitchens followed him extensively, read all sorts of things, talked on and off the record with a whole bunch of people, and came to the conclusion that, see if this rings a bell, the Clintons poison everything. Eventually he set his sights on bigger targets, but this is one of his classic little polemics, like his book The Missionary Position about Mother Teresa, or The Trial of Henry Kissinger, about Henry Kissinger, who Hitchens, alone of everyone on earth, insisted on calling Kissinger, as the kind of little feint that he always used to do to worshipful audiences to give them a hint that maybe he understood the subject better than they did. I haven't read No One Left to Lie To since it first came out. This came out while Clinton was in office, I think. Is that right? 1999 this came out. So I haven't read it since then, so I'll give it another try. Then we have an older book. This is the sort of thing that you find at the Brattle out in the sale lot. It's not discarded Tom Clancy volumes out there. You never know what you're going to find. It could be something 200 years old. The sale lot is benefited by the fact that the staff inside the store is trained in the art of book evaluation and also knows exactly what will sell and what won't. So I found an older book. This thing is, what is this from? 1922. Okay, well, not as old as 1919, but still. This is Authors of the Day by Grant Overton, an enterprising young editor who here profiles with photographs. There's Christopher Morley. Photographs a whole bunch of the popular writers of his day, only a few of whom are still popular. And that is always the appeal to me of books like this. Not so much, I'm not going to go straight to Somerset Maugham or whatever. I think he gets a chapter in here. Yeah, he gets a chapter in here. Booth Tarkington, Joseph Conrad. I'm not going to go straight to those chapters. Instead, I'm going to go straight to the ones that aren't those. The ones that are about the authors who are now completely forgotten. And oftentimes, I will be put on the scent of something in chapters like that that I really want to revisit. I want to explore again. So, and these were all dirt cheap. So these gambles cost me nothing. Then we have a murder mystery, historical murder mystery. Couldn't do without murder mysteries. I don't think. I find it hard to go to a used bookstore or charity shop or whatever and not get at least one murder mystery. And I think I've read this before. This came out in 2010, so before we were talking to each other, but I'm pretty sure that I read it. I'm going to give it another read, though, and see. This is by Bruce McBain, and it is Roman Games. And it's a murder mystery starring as its sleuth, Pliny the Younger. That's the Plinius Secundus there, is Pliny the Younger, who wrote a collection of very good, very interesting letters that we have. Wrote an official document of praise to the Emperor Trajan that we have. And is the subject of at least one other murder mystery series. Albert Bell does a series of murder mysteries starring Pliny the Younger and his friend Tacitus, who solve crimes. That series is wonderful. I think I might have read this one, but I will give it a try. This is a completely different thing. But the reason why, you could see, Pliny was a ninny. he wasn't a Sam Spade or an enterprising thinker at all. He was timid and would almost certainly have condemned the first person who was accused of murder without trying to figure out whether or not they were guilty. But the reason why he appeals to writers as a protagonist in a murder mystery series is because we know a lot about him. We have those letters. Those letters let us straight into his world. All the things that he cared about, all the things that frightened him or preoccupied him. And that helps a lot. When you're trying to bring alive a character in the ancient world, that helps a lot. Then we have a series of examples of Brattle's second chances. There are quite a few second chances left here in this pile. One of them is another Modern Library volume of a book that I have. I have, let's see, the Norton Critical Edition. I have the Everyman Library over there. I have a nice illustrated edition. But this edition I just could not let pass. This is the Modern Library edition of the BBC adaptation of Tom Jones by Henry Fielding. There you have Max Beasley as Tom Jones on the cover, and that's the only reason that I got this, is that I absolutely loved, in the 1990s, the BBC did a multi-part adaptation of Tom Jones, and it was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. It was completely charming, completely smart, whole bunch, a fantastic cast, just having the time of their lives, or at least seeming to. Especially Brian Blessed as Squire Weston, who just completely steals the show whenever he has a scene as the ultimate country booby squire. And I haven't reread Tom Jones in quite some time, but I had this once upon a time. I got it at the retail bookstore where I used to work, and I got rid of it. No idea why. And ever since then, for 2 decades, every time I see an edition of Tom Jones at a used bookstore or a charity shop or whatever, I think, gee, I wish it was that. I wish I had that version again. Not because it's any different textually, but just because it has the packaging that I like. It reminds me fondly of a production of Tom Jones that I really like. And there it was, at the Brattle. Then we have another thing that this came out in the 90s, I believe. 2003. This came out in 2003. I loved it. It got really good press, really good reviews. I had a copy. I read it, really enjoyed it. Never thought I would get rid of it, but eventually I did get rid of it. No idea why. And I found it again and grabbed it. This is The Path by Chet Ramo, who had a column in the Boston Globe just forever and ever and ever. Sort of an appreciative naturalist. And here, he taught at a school in a college in Massachusetts. And he used to take the same path. He used to walk the same path from his home to his classroom and then back. And in this book, he follows the kind of the conceit that maybe that is the whole of the universe. That maybe, look at how much you can learn, how much you can observe, how much wonder you can find, even in such a small setting. I think this had, the end papers have the map of exactly the route that we're taking. I thought this was wonderful, a wonderful piece of nature writing, and I got rid of it I have no idea why. So now I have it again. I will reread it. Same thing with this next one. I've had this in hardcover. I've had it in paperback. I've read it and enjoyed it, and then I get rid of it. And I don't know why. I found a hardcover today with deckled edges. I will try my best to keep this. This is by Ross Barber, and it is the Marlowe Papers. There you see, this is the hardcover. It's a novel in blank verse about Christopher Marlowe that follows Ross Barber's idea that Christopher Marlowe wrote the plays of Shakespeare. She is a Marlovian. And she's a really interesting figure, really smart, and a really good get if you can get her in the mood to come to your historical society or whatever and do a talk on Marlowe and Shakespeare. Very game, very thought provoking. Of course, the idea, the theory that Christopher Marlowe wrote the plays of Shakespeare has the same problem with Marlowe that it does with most foremost candidates, which is that the timing is off. But she chose to do this as a work of fiction, so it's less important and really good. It's a really good Marlowe book. I have a small collection of Marlowe fiction. There might be some that are visible in this picture, and this belongs on that shelf. So I don't know why I keep getting rid of it. Now that I have it, I will try to keep it. Then this next one was a gamble. It was when things are as cheap as they are out in the sale lot of the Brattle, you can just take a flyer. And I did. This will probably not be something that I keep, but it will probably touch me. It might even move me to tears. This is called A Letter to My Dog, Notes to Our Best Friends. And it is a heavily illustrated book of people writing letters to their dogs. Now, I imagine the thing that's going to get me here, I imagine that most of these letters are people writing to their dog about the wonderful circumstances in which they met. I was a wreck. My life was in ruins. I went to the pound and adopted you, and you saved me. That sort of story. I imagine that most of these things will be like that, and that'll be plenty touching enough, but I'd be willing to bet some of these letters are written to dogs who aren't alive anymore. And that'll get me where I live, definitely. And I might be wrong. This might end up being a dog book that I keep. I have a handful of them, and this might be one of them. But for a pittance, to give it a try, more than worth it. Then we have a Reader's Digest hardcover. Once upon a time, Reader's Digest published a vast library of canonical classics, and I found one for my favorite Robert Louis Stevenson novel, The Black Arrow. This pretty green cover there. I looked through this, and I was a little bit surprised. I found one thing that I was looking for, which was the sheet of paper. In every one of these things, there was a little booklet, a little sheet of paper, describing the book and telling you that, about the Reader's Digest reprint program. But the one thing that isn't in here is illustrations. This doesn't appear to be illustrated at all, which is kind of weird. It didn't take the top spin off it too much for me because I have the old Scribner's illustrated edition of the Black Arrow, illustrated by N.C. Wyeth. So I doubt that this would have better illustrations than that. Although sometimes I've noticed Reader's Digest volumes that have the Wyeth illustrations. But I don't have this edition, and I have no objection whatsoever to having multiple editions of classics that I love. None whatsoever. Then we have a book that I've had before. I got this when it first came out. In the early 2000s, I want to say. Yeah, 2002. And really liked it and got rid of it. So now I have it again. We'll see if I keep it this time. This is by Paula Wediger, and it's called Venetian Dreaming. And it's a contemporary account of what it's like to go to Venice and live there. Where do you get an apartment? What's the good place to find an apartment? What's a good way to do it? What's a good price to pay? Where do you go for your food? What's your daily routine like? In other words, despite the title, a lot more practical an idea of a Venice book than most Venice books. I remember liking that aspect of it a lot when I read it. Those of you who are new to the channel, I have a soft spot for books about Venice. I used to live there and knew it in all its seasons and all its moods, and will never go back. It's the amazing thing here is when I get a book like this is to realize I will never return to Venice. I'll never see it again. So books like this will have to do in place of that. I haven't read this in 20 years, so I will definitely give it... Oh no. Oh no, we're having a collapse. There we go. And then the last book, classic example of a second chance at the Brattle. I got this thing from who was this? Abrams. I got this when it first came out. 10 years ago? 20 years ago? Let's find the date on this. Before we were talking to each other, I know that. 2008. I got this in 2008. And I fell into it. I was spellbound by it. I spent a whole afternoon, a whole weekend with it. And then I wrote a long piece about it for Open Letters Monthly, the literary journal that was the precursor to Open Letters Review. And I loved how the piece came out. It was a joy to research and write. And I loved the book, and then I got rid of it. And then I got rid of it. And I have no idea why. Why would I do that? And because it's the Brattle, and the Brattle, you see everything. At the Brattle, sooner or later, you see everything. They had a copy sitting right there. So I grabbed it. This is a big book of the art of JC Leyendecker. That's not JC Leyendecker on the cover. That's one of his... oh, God. Oh, God, we're having a bit of a collapse here. Let's see if we can salvage this so that we can do a Steve pyramid. Oh, can we? Let's see if we can do that. You're all willing to go. You're ready to fall to the floor. But if we're patient, maybe we can save it. And you know what the thing was? You know what the structural thing was that caused the whole pile to fall? Hitchens. If it had been built on Eudora Welty, it would have been rock solid. Look at that. All right, I saved the pyramid. So we can go along with this thing here. This is beautiful. It is just beautiful. It is fantastic. It has every piece of artwork that Leyendecker's ever done. It has great prose. All the covers, even in a usual Leyendecker retrospective, you'll only have one or two of those covers. You won't have them all. You won't have this great a detail, all this history. No way. No way. So this is sort of the definitive pictorial retrospective on this artist, who was a precursor to Norman Rockwell. He was something of a stalking horse for Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell literally followed Leyendecker around. I got a house where he had a house. And scrupulously imitated a lot of his compositions. Imitated, I'm saying, but you could say stolen. I mean, you don't get a book like this for Rockwell, but you get this for Leyendecker, and this has all of Leyendecker. It has more of him than any other book that could possibly have. All of these Saturday Evening Post covers, which Rockwell took over for him, and a lot of them in the larger detail, so you can really see what's going on. Just wonderful. And I never thought I'd see this again. What would be the chances that I would ever see this again? So I grabbed it. There is the back. I love this artist. Absolutely love this artist. And I saw this just sitting there, so I grabbed it. So that was a second chance at the Brattle that I will live with for probably this weekend. Amazingly. I'll probably just spend a huge amount of time with it this weekend. And again, as I always say, I will try to find that piece, the long piece that I wrote, and spruce it up and put a link to it down below. I'll try to do that. But anyway, that was my Brattle trip. It was brisk and cool, hardly any people there. It was delightful. I don't know when I'll be back, but this will hold me for quite some time. So we have JC Leyendecker. Amazing. This was in conjunction with an exhibit that was going up and down the eastern seacoast. Then how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this so we don't have yet another collapse, right? We don't want another collapse. We have On Writing by Eudora Welty. We have No One Left to Lie To, Hitchens' assassination of Bill Clinton. We have Roman Games, Murder Mystery. I believe this was the author's debut of Pliny the Younger as a sleuth. We have Authors of the Day, which is exactly what it is. It's the authors who were prominent for a book like this literally a century ago. We have The Path by Chet Ramo. So happy to find this thing after all this time without it. Just wonderful. We have the Modern Library Tom Jones with exactly the display elements that I always want. We have Venetian Dreaming, always up for a book on Venice, always. We have the Reader's Digest book of The Black Arrow by Robert Louis Stevenson. We have Letters to My Dog, which I will polish off today. We have The Marlowe Papers by Ross Barber, the book that sort of shot her to notoriety. And then we have a bunch of mass market paperbacks. Oh, You Red Sox by William McLeod Rain. Many Rivers to Cross Before I Clothe Myself. The Portable Henry James. so you get bite-sized Henry James instead of him going on and on and on. You have 7 Men and 2 Others by Max Beerbohm, with the famous Enoch Soames in there. You have Writer's Diary, a Writer's Notebook by Somerset Maugham. And finally, a science fiction novel, Nightmare Blue, by the great Gardner Dozois and Alex Effinger, George Alec Effinger. So there we go. That was a Brattle haul for a crisp Thursday morning. So I'm going to wrap this up for now and see what I can do about all these things. I'll clean them up. I'll take an inventory of them, all that sort of thing. That's always a lot of fun, to set aside that half hour to sort of, I guess the word would be to process my Brattle books. That'll be a lot of fun to do. And then once that's done, I will partition them off wherever they're going to go. The classics will come in here. But then I get the wonderful moment also of deciding which of my Brattle purchases today I will read. I will summarily read tonight. I will put them in the hopper for tonight. This list, the Letters to My Dog won't be tough at all. And I'm tempted to read the nonfiction in the Portable Henry James. I think it's at least as likely, there are odds on likely, that the Leyendecker book will just pull me in and keep me pulled in. We shall see. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.